I wanted to kind of give an overview of what our program is and what we do, because being here gives you the opportunity to see the result, which is the entrepreneurs that you've seen give their pitch. And starting anything within a government agency, I made it seem kind of simple. I just asked permission and then I was able to do it, but it's never that simple. We've had challenges, moving things forward, changing or impacting a culture who's done things for 50 years a certain way. And as a result, I have an incredible team of support from our Center Chief Technologists. You met Dennis earlier, he was on stage. And so I'm able to do what I do because of the team of people that I've been fortunate enough to be able to work with. But I want to talk a little bit about the program. So NASA has goals, missions, and so our program aligns with those goals. And if you really look at like laying the foundation for America to maintain constant human presence in low Earth orbit, some of those things, what we're looking for, medical devices, disruptive medical devices, will help enable that, right? I mean, address national challenges and catalyze economic growth. When small businesses are able to actually grow, raise the funding that they need to move technologies forward, they're able to hire people, grow jobs, impact the economy. And so we align really cleanly with what NASA has as our mission goal. But this is, so I want to tell you, this is our, you met Dennis, he's the #2 for science for all the agency. And who you're going to see on this video is Jim. He is our mission directorate. He's the AA for all of space technology. And this is what he says about NASA iTech. Maybe.
Part of the community that we typically won't reach. We view it as very complementary to the programs that we have. In this context, we can leverage very heavily the private investment interests that have, so everything has a strong commercialization potential, but for us, it also has a link to our missions.
And that's really important. When we're looking for technology, they have to have both an Earth application, but they have to be able to link to solving a problem for NASA and having that type of mission. And so it's important. So overall, for NASA iTech, our team, and for this program, we've come up with what our mission to lead the development of strategic partnerships to discover advancements in commercial market technologies not already funded by NASA that enable NASA's Moon to Mars mission. And why is that important is because we have to find technologies that have a commercial market. If we've already been exposed to it, meaning we've already funded it, it doesn't qualify for NASA iTech. And the reason is we have tons of programs throughout the agency that you could apply for that if you've received funding, you can get additional funding or contracts. And so I never stood up NASA iTech to sort of change the way we do that system. It works. What I did was I stood up NASA iTech to find the ones that we don't normally engage or encounter, and then to find a way in which those companies can actually raise funds. Commercial market application is really important because most investors give enough taxes. I would say they've given enough money to the government, right? They don't want to just give more money to the government for the development of technology for the government. They would like to see some sort of return on their investment. And so that's what, at NASA iTech, we look for those technologies that have both a dual use for NASA as well as a commercial market. And the vision to the infusion of a robust spin-in technology pipeline aligned with agency mission needs, I would like to see those technologies really infused within NASA so that we can see them move forward down the road. This is my team. You've met some of them. Some of them are a little more better at hiding, like Harla. I don't know, is she in the room? Because you might have met her when you checked in. Actually, she's my partner in crime, just to tell the truth. She's been a part of this from the very beginning, and we really collaborate on what we do. We probably talk several times a day on things that we're working on, but I don't do this by myself. I have a very strong team, but she's the one that leads the team for National Institute of Aerospace, which is who I'm partnered with. And so, why NASA iTech? If you think about, we replace laptops every 3 years. And technology is moving at such a rapid pace that if we just replace just our laptops every 3 years, just our laptops, if we, in the government, and when we're developing technologies, there's such a long road for the development of that technology that outside of the agency, there are some technologies that are actually solving a problem on Earth, healthcare, whatever, that if we actually try to engage them and draw them in, they can actually be developed much quicker, external, raising the funds, moving faster. And I'll give you some examples of where that actually meets the needs. So those are the technologies we're trying to find, is those that can move faster, and that's the reason. So this is an example of what I'm talking about. So traditional government funding timeline, when you look at what an SBIR would be, you get phase 1 would ultimately be a 1 year before they could receive funds for a 2 year. But that's a 3-year time period. And I just said we replace laptops every 3 years, but that's one technology in a 3-year time period. But let's hear what an investor said about
We have companies here that were
iTech.
finishing up an A-series going to a B-series raise. So that's a completely different discussion. The beauty of it is those discussions are coming back with literally the technologists and the experts right now in the industry. You know, that can help us from a government perspective look at it. We went from, we had 10 obviously in each cycle, 8 of them fit our investment thesis, 5 we went into consult with in some advisory role, 2 we took the funding, 1, this is in a span of 6 months, and then 1 we closed within 3 months for them to get $9 million in the bank so they can move on.
In a 6-month time period, one of the top 10 was able to secure $9 million to move their technology forward. But you heard him talk about the other companies, the other 9 companies that were involved, and how quickly and fast they were able to get funding and move the technology forward. And that's typical outside of the government, right? I knew that because that was the world that I worked in. That was the world I operated in. And so my goal was to try and bring that into the government so we can leverage those, find a way in which everyone wins in that. And so corporations look at it also from a different perspective.
You have to invent everything yourselves. And some of those technologies already exist. We need to find ways to help you solve your problems. And I think that that's what hit us when we had the iTech forum at the headquarters of there's limitless opportunities, we just need to make the connections. I just see lots of opportunities where we can help to solve problems, and if you don't mind, I'd like to, this was from Betty Sapp yesterday, talking about utilizing commercial products that already exist.
Yes.
And I think that this is a perfect complement to the technologies that we have to be deployed in space.
So not to embarrass him, but he's sitting in the back of the room, Elliot Peck. Elliot runs Canon for North America. And Elliot hosted one of our NASA iTech forums. And at the time, I'm thinking he might not have had really a good idea of what we were bringing to the table, but as he sat through the forum, what he realized, and that's what he's talking about, what he realized was that, wow, we're developing some things that NASA could probably use. And they usually target the consumer market because they're developing a consumer product. But when he said to me at a event one night over a, I don't know, nacho bar, he said to me that they had a sensor that can produce full color imagery in complete darkness. I was a little bit astounded. I kind of didn't believe, like, what? Can you demonstrate that? And so that, hence the relationship that we now have with Canon. And they're developing amazing technologies that we don't have to reinvent as a government agency. Let's try and figure out how to leverage those so that we can work together and be more efficient and more effective. And so this I have to sort of tell you before I play it. This is Heather Wilson. It was at this year's Space Symposium. And as I was sitting in the audience, I was sitting next to a 2-star general who elbows me after she talks, and he says, so Kira, did you notice we might have adopted some of your things from your NASA iTech model? And I said, yeah. I said, I think it's great. He goes, you're not offended? I said, my team and I set out to change the way government engages with entrepreneurs so that everyone wins, so that it's not just about us, it's not just about them, but investors, corporations, government, and entrepreneurs. It's a win-win for everybody. That's what we set out to do. But listen to what the Air Force has done.
And last month in New York City, we held our inaugural pitch day. We invited entrepreneurs, universities, and startups to pitch revolutionary solutions to some of our complicated problems. The idea was no more than 5 pages in a pitch deck. We got over 400 proposals, and we selected 59 companies to pitch their ideas to government and industry and investors in New York. We awarded 51 contracts in one day, valued at over $8 million. And the average time to close a deal on a one-page contract with the United States Air Force was 15 minutes.
So at the end of the day, if I walk out and were to get hit by a bus, I would still feel as though we have made a change within government. What we've done, the model that our team, and I have to say, I came up with a model, I sat down with our chief technologist and said, shoot holes in it, tell me where I'm missing something so you can help me build this so that it works. And I'm always willing to change it, but it's changing the way government's doing business with entrepreneurs. The Air Force, $8 million, 54, 59 companies in like 15 minutes? That's not ever been heard of happening. If we, all government agencies, could begin thinking that way and doing it that way in ways in which there's a technology that could be used for us but also have a commercial market application, I think that we would actually be able to invest the money that no one's going to invest in outside of a space agency more strategically. And so what we've done as a team is we've created a different ecosystem. So traditionally you have innovators, corporations that innovators want to work with, the investment community, and then government. So you have certain kind of companies that generally just want government funding to develop their technology or to, do their research in a lab, and that's traditional. But what I would say is you have a subset of innovators that would generally never engage with government because their goal is not to work for the government or work with the government. It's really to develop a product to impact the world. And so I would say that through NASA iTech, we've been able to sort of build a bridge with non-traditional corporations like Canon is a perfect example, with innovators who haven't ever thought about the potential of their technology being able to solve a problem for us. Now all of a sudden we're approaching them at a conference and I'm like, have you thought about your technology and how it could help NASA? And they're like, oh my gosh, that would be amazing, but no, I've never thought about it. The investment community, obviously, the amount of dollars or investments that are going into space technologies has grown significantly over the last 5 years, certainly over the last 10. And then being able to bridge the gaps so that we, as a government agency, can help them understand, John, what the requirements are for a bolt, right? Helping them get it to where it needs to be, the testing that they need to get done so that we could actually utilize it to solve a problem. And so that ecosystem that we've developed has built what you see in the room today, the entrepreneurs, the alumni that we have. That's why it works, I think.
NASA is changing the way government can acquire leading-edge technologies to meet their needs more efficiently and cost-effectively.
So that was one of our congressmen who came to speak at one of our Ignite the Night events, and he was blown away at the fact that a government agency is doing it differently. He's like, this is how it should be done, from a congressional member who votes on where our funding goes or doesn't go, which was pretty significant. So who does it benefit? So we ensured when we set this up that it would actually benefit society. Those technologies that are actually being developed to solve healthcare problems, develop batteries so that we can actually have, utilize energy in a different way. It actually impacts the private sector, which includes innovators, corporations, and investment community. And it impacts other government agencies. we've been involved with the EPA. Obviously, you just heard from Heather Wilson with the Air Force. And DOE, we've partnered with DOE. DOD, I've briefed DOD about 5 times on this, on the model that we use, because they're very interested in replicating it. I am ecstatic because I have a small team. We can't do it all. I don't need to do it all, but I'm happy to help them figure out what works for their agency. So again, we can actually engage entrepreneurs in a different way, help them move the technology forward that as a country, you know, we would actually see innovation moving much quicker than what we normally do. And NASA. So our goal was to make sure that everyone benefited, that through this sort of ecosystem that we've built, that it's not just about NASA, it's not just about DOE or EPA, it's not just about the corporation, it's not just about the investor, it's not just about the entrepreneur. And then the societal benefit is obvious, it's there. So this is one of our entrepreneurs. He was the head, and I say was, he was the head surgeon of Children's National. He applied, he was one of our finalists for NASA iTech, and I say was because he's no longer the head surgeon of Children's National. He's now currently running a company that's developing an autonomous robotic capability to perform surgeries. And so this is sort of, what made you want to get involved with this?
The epiphany for me was that I was teaching my son how to ski a number of years ago. He was about 4 or 5 years old, and I do these airway reconstructions for little babies. So babies are born with tiny little breathing pipes, and if you don't fix them, they'll all die. And we were on the top of a hill, and I got a call about a baby that's coming over from about 3-4 hours away from the West Coast. The challenge was that obviously if I didn't get down safely, it wasn't good for me, and nor was it good to the baby. So it occurred to me that any knowledge that's contained within sort of one individual is not a very good knowledge, and you should be able to program it or have it in a technology that can be transmitted horizontally across to your colleagues and then vertically to next generation. So hence sort of a notion about wanting to democratize surgery. That's so really the motivation.
And so one of the things he had told me was he really, he felt really bad about the fact that he was that single point of failure. He was on vacation, and as a country, he was in Canada, but head surgeon of Children's National, he was the top surgeon that can perform that specific surgery, and that there was not another doctor that could really perform it with a high % of success rate. And so he had to leave his family on vacation, and it was less about the fact that he had to leave his family, but more about the fact that what happens after I die? If this plane were to go down, that child would die. What happens with all the knowledge that I've gained over all these years as the head surgeon? And how can we transfer that knowledge to something that can be usable by more than just me? Right? So that was his goal, and actually he's out doing that now. He's actually running a company to do that, to pursue that. A brilliant guy. And so this is one of our, you might have heard of ULA, maybe? Well, if you're not in the space industry, defense industry, maybe not, but this is from
NASA can
CEO.
play the catalyst role that we're seeing here. Your program should absolutely be the model.
What Tori learned about being a part of NASA iTech was that the model worked, and that NASA was the one that could be the catalyst to help it work across other agencies, working with the entrepreneurs and working with the private sector. This is, I invited someone to come out, and I feel like sometimes you don't really get it until you show up. And then there's this usually wow factor, like, oh my gosh, this was amazing, the technologies were great, or until you're a part of it. And so the EPA, I met Francisco Cruz, I don't know, at one point, and I said, hey, you know, you should come out to see our NASA iTech event. It was just, we were at Langley, so it was a quick drive from DC. I say quick, but it wasn't that far of a drive from DC. And so he squeezed it in his schedule, and he was blown away. And this is what he said about it.
I heard the presentations, especially from the top 3. I was blown away by the way they're able to attract some of these companies to answer some of their challenges that are tough technology challenges. And we have some of those tough science challenges as well that, although we have fantastic scientists and we have people that are working around the clock to try to answer some of the challenges we have, the reality is, we don't have the budget we would like to have to be able to tackle some of the challenges in the way we would like to. So it's definitely a great time to start looking outside of the paradigm that we operate under, to look at different ways and different companies that are trying to answer these challenges. And the great thing, just from sitting at the NASA iTech, was looking at how some of these technologies, even though they were geared for space, we could repurpose them for our own challenges in the seaborne world. And that's something that I brought back to our agency, and also talking to some of the entrepreneurs and kind of looking outside of just your specific niche and seeing how some of the technologies could be repurposed for different scientific challenges in the environment, in space, and in medicine.
So what he learned while he was there, that 10 companies presented, 3 of those could be immediately a solution for challenges that they had at the EPA. And he said, how do I get in touch with these companies? What do I do? How can I help them? And so him and his family ended up moving out of state, out of DC. He took another role, but here's what he does do. He's not here at our event, but he follows the companies. He follows us on live stream. He watches. He'll reach out to me and say, hey, this company, can you put me in touch with this one? Because that technology could help solve this problem for us. Or he'll say, hey, Kira, can I put them in touch with the Coast Guard? Because that anti-icing technology would be amazing to help the Coast Guard. And we work with the Coast Guard all the time, and so I have a connection there, so let me help connect them. And so what you'll learn by being here is there's a lot of that connectivity that takes place when it's no longer just about you, right? When it's about really the bigger impact. And so that's what really has taken place from the very get-go for NASA iTech. And my entire team, we have a pretty sizable Rolodex across the board. And so we are great about actually connecting an entrepreneur with a technology here or there, or to this agency, or to move the technology forward. And really, as an entrepreneur, because I've been one, you're really more interested in actually somebody else validating your research. So often you're willing to share your device, or for us, it was our peptide, with a federal agency that could validate the research that we had already, the results of our research that we had already achieved. Peter didn't know he was going to be on stage.
Perfect example of a public-private partnership where the government, in this case NASA, identifies some of our toughest challenges and tries to rally together all the entrepreneurial spirit we have in the world to help address some of mankind's greatest challenges and greatest opportunities.
He wasn't even talking from like a cue card or anything, but he summed up what we do very well and how it could be beneficial.
I'm so proud of what Kira is doing, what Dennis is doing, and how we are now partnering with small business and entrepreneurs to bring those ideas in. From NASA's perspective, we commercialized launch about a decade ago, and when we look at our budgets now that were derived 8 to 10 years ago for a mission we're doing right now, every line item is up except for launch costs, which in some cases have been down over 50% for some of our launches. And so what we've done in enabling the commercial sector to partner with us has not only made us better and provided a better cadence of launches, but it's driven our fees way down. And we want to do this now across the board and partner with as many firms as we can. And you look at labor statistics that say since the end of the Great Recession, 62% of all new jobs have come from small business, but the largest source of funding for small businesses are personal family savings, and 40% of businesses say that if they had better funding and better access to capital, they would hire more employees. And you look at some great ideas that might die on the vine because they either don't have funding or, some people just, why would you leave a cushy, your paycheck rolls in every 2 weeks to go start something up where you don't know if you can do it and if the funding is there. And so what Kira's doing in not only bringing new technologies to NASA, but actually connecting them with venture capital and with the people that can fund those ideas, where as a government we may not be able to, is something that I think not only is going to enable NASA, but can enable all of government.
Jeff DeWitt is our current CFO for the agency, and for those of you who are in the sort of investment or entrepreneurial community, you might be familiar with the language he spoke, and you might say, wow, is he an entrepreneur? Yes, he is. He will be our speaker tomorrow morning. He's going to come up and speak, but the fact that he got it very quickly, said this is great, because he's looking at the numbers. He's saying where we've done that as an agency, we can see that the numbers within our budget that we had budgeted out for 10 years ago, it's actually decreased our cost, yet we're still able to achieve the goals that we need to achieve. And so he'd like to see where it applies, because it's not applicable to everything, but where it can apply, where the technologies can be leveraged, where it will help the agency. It's important, not just for the agency, but it also stimulates the economy and grows jobs, and that's important as well. So I wanted to kind of go through, people go, okay, I'm at this NASA iTech thing. So we have an Ignite the Night that actually we like to have about 3 that feed into a cycle, a forum. Today, you're at our forum. So we've had 3 Ignite the Nights, or maybe 2 because we were furloughed. We might have had 2 because of the furlough. But those 2 actually fed in sort of as a funnel. And so we actually put the focus areas out there. They're already out there. Our next one is coming up, but you can apply for them. So we open up the application process. It's probably opened until it needs to close so that we make our selection. It'll be open for maybe a year. So we do our call for ideas. We evaluate it. We have external people evaluate for the top 25, looking at the technology for a commercial market application. Then we have our center chief technologists that evaluate the technology for a space application and select the 10 that you see here, that were up here today. And then we hold an Ignite the Night event. Usually we try to find a city that is not a typical city that we work with, that NASA works with typically, because that's where we're going to uncover those technologies that we hadn't seen before, or that we hadn't thought of, a solution we hadn't thought of. And so we like to do it in sort of cities that we don't have a NASA center. And then basically we do the same thing, the same process applies to our forum, and then we hold the forum like you have here. These are where we've had events. So NASA iTech's it's about 2.5 years old. So our first companies presented in December of 2016. We did it in Washington, D.C., because it was sort of a test pilot for us to say, will this work? Because you heard me say earlier, I asked Dennis, hey, I want to try this. And he's like, I'm not sure it'll work, but I'll let you try it. So those are the locations we've had them so far, either the Ignite the Nights or the forums. And this is the impact. So in the 2.5 years, we've had 24 focus areas, over 500 solutions have come through. There's been 117 innovators that have presented at either our Ignite the Nights or our forums. So we've been able to actually engage with 117 of those 500 proposals. Those are the attendees, 2,000, maybe like 2,200 almost. 30 investors. We have over 79 judges that come from universities, government, industry, private sector, that actually bring something to the table. We've had 28 states and 6 countries that have presented their technologies out of those 117 people. And $410 million of private investment dollars. These are just some of the companies. These are the companies that have presented. And this is where all the innovators have come from, just so that you kind of get a grasp of, even though I showed you where we had our locations, the Ignite the Nights or the iTech forums, we're still reaching broader than that, even in other countries. And so this is just some of the technology, sort of the technology coming in. So ACOR, they're actually working on they have a molecule that can eliminate the biofilm that develops in the water filtration system. That also develops in the water filtration systems here on Earth. And it's a non-toxic solution. So the mom and daughter were scuba diving, said, wow, this biofilm doesn't form underneath the water. There must be a non-toxic or natural solution that's occurring underneath the water. And so hence ACOR started. And they were one of our first entrepreneurs developing a technology. NASA today will be presenting sometime this month on the research because they allowed us to test their molecules at our Marshall Space Flight Center, and it worked. It did eliminate the biofilm in a non-toxic way. So they're presenting at a conference this month on their technology. FGC Plasma, they're actually developing a plasma solution that can actually minimize the, the plasma solution can actually, not minimize, but regulate the temperature in the jet engine. And so as a result of getting an SBIR, they entered into an agreement with a major jet engine manufacturer. This guy graduated, this was his science project in high school. Graduated with this plasma solution. When I took it to the Air Force Academy, because we were there and we talked to some of their jet engine professors that work at the Air Force Academy, they said, if this guy can really do what he says he can do, oh my gosh, this would save us millions of dollars every single year. And so guess what agency he's now working with as well? Might be the Air Force. Germ Falcon, you'll hear from them tomorrow during the lunch, but they're the ones that said if the Roomba and the drone had a baby, they'd have the Germ Falcon and it could sterilize the space station. We spend a lot of money on payload on sending sanitary wipes up to sanitize space station. I don't know if anybody in here has a Roomba, but I do. And I really like the fact that when I come home, I feel like somebody came in and magically vacuumed my carpet and kept my floors clean. And so my Roomba does that. But wouldn't it be great if we could actually sanitize space station, because the Germ Falcon has a device that could dock itself, undock itself, and sanitize it without us having to ship sanitary wipes to space station. That would decrease our costs and our payload, which would be a significant savings for us over the long run, and I'm sure the astronauts would enjoy not having to wipe everything down. Just a guess, but I'm thinking. Liberty Biosecurity, they actually started a space medicine program within their, so the head of the genetics lab for Harvard Medical is one of the applicants and one of the finalists from Liberty Biosecurity. He's developing a drug that can actually reduce the effects of aging on the body. I'm taking them, they're just not working as quickly as I'd like. But I am taking them, and it gives you quite a bit of energy. No, not any jitters, but the way it works, it actually, as you hit a certain age at a molecular level, your cells begin to separate. When they separate, we begin to experience the effects of aging on the body. He's developed a drug, so when you're younger, they adhere together. They're stuck together. You don't have the aging, wrinkles, gray hair, all the other stuff that we experience, right? And so, so with their particular drug, they actually cause your cells to actually adhere again together. And so I went, okay, this is great. Well, I had a friend of mine, heard him give the pitch, and he's a propulsion engineer, very, very technical, meticulous. He says, I need to try this. And I said, okay, well, so he went down, did a baseline test to see what the age of his body was. I won't say his name because he might get mad if he's watching or something, but he wanted to see what the age of, of his body was. And so it was accurate. It said, yeah, you're about 52. He took the drug for a year, went in and took another test to determine the age of his organs internally at a molecular level. And he calls me just ecstatic. He's like, it's saying I'm 36, like at a molecular level. So actually, Dr. David Sinclair developed this drug really to enhance and increase your longevity of life, right? So that you can live longer, healthier, because your organs are healthier. And I'm all about that. But I saw him in Boston maybe about a year ago. He sat on a panel with me, and I hadn't seen him in about a year and a half. And when he sat next to me, I was a little bit mad because I hadn't been taking the drug. I hadn't started taking it at the time. But he sat next to me. I said, David, you have no wrinkles. And he goes, yeah, he's older than me, or maybe a couple years older. He's a couple years older than me. And I'm like, no, you have no wrinkles. And he goes, I've been taking my drug. And by the way, if you're interested, you can buy it on Amazon. So I'm happy to share any of that information. I don't want to like market what it is, but it is for sale online, and I do take it because I would like to live a longer, healthier life, to be realistic. So we reach attendees across the U.S. as well. I guess people aren't going to travel far and wide. What I wanted to say also is that through this process, because it was a sort of pilot program testing it to see if it would work, initially we didn't have access to the NASA meatball, meaning they said, no, you can't put the NASA meatball on there because we're not sure it'll work. And I said, I go back to my team and I go, well, guess what? We can't use the NASA meatball. I said, because, you know, it's a test pilot program, so I was fine with it. My team was disappointed, but I said, we're going to create the branding and build it, but we're going to make sure it includes NASA in the name of the program. Because there's only one NASA, which is why it's called NASA iTech. In 2.5 years, we've been able to reach 1.4 billion people. Now, so you guys are going to say, but you don't have the meatball, but you still have NASA backing. Well, I would say in 2.5 years, we've received 10 web releases in 2.5 years, 10 total in 2.5 years from NASA, from big NASA, and then 10 tweets in 2.5 years, 10 tweets. Everything else, my team and I have actually pushed out to get the reach in the media, to get the information out. And we've done that and built it organically, and we've reached 1.4 billion people. That's astronomical in my mind. And so with all of that advertising, it's about 13 million value and equivalent to what we would have been spending for that kind of advertising that we didn't spend. And then in terms of reader engagement, we're actually about 3 times the industry standard. And what does that mean? It means that when somebody clicks on your link to read something that has to do with NASA iTech, so when they click on it, if they click on it and actually have it open for less than 30 seconds, it doesn't count. If it's longer than 30 seconds, now all of a sudden it counts as reader engagement because I have their attention for longer than 30 seconds. The industry standard is 12%. Anything with NASA iTech in it is 34.8%. It's almost 3 times that standard. That tells me there's a great interest in the kind of work that we're doing. We've been covered by Forbes, Wired magazine, and these are just some of the things. And this is not, I mean, I work for the government. We don't pay to be put into a magazine. I didn't actually even know we were covered by Forbes until last month in June. I was like, oh, we were in, someone talked about us in Forbes? And Allie's like, yeah, you didn't know that? No, but I think it's kind of cool that it's getting the exposure that it needs because it benefits the startup companies and those investors that are investing in them. And then then the byproduct is it will actually benefit us as a government agency that could use that technology and help us solve a problem. And so these are just, so we are going to be, Davin, are you in the room? Davin's back there. Our next forum will be in Las Cruces, New Mexico. And so Davin's out here just kind of see what we do here. Those are our focus areas. The cycle's open now, so if you know of companies, tell them to go to the website, nasaitech.com, and they can actually apply based on those areas. We have an X Factor category for our focus areas, which means that it's a technology that you think we might be able to use to solve a problem, but we hadn't thought of that as a solution yet. And I would say a large percentage of the entrepreneurs that apply to NASA iTech fall in the X Factor category. And clearly, they're pretty amazing technologies whenever you see them. And so opportunities looking forward, these are for the next year, these are our planned locations. We haven't planned out all of the Ignite the Nights, But if you guys know of a city that you want to host us in, we're happy to to consider bring us out there. You've just got to help us get boots on the ground for Ignite the Night so we can reach the community, the entrepreneurial community, but we're happy to do that. I have an amazing team. And so I wanted to open it up. We've got a few minutes that if anybody had any questions, because I've covered a lot, but I wanted you to have a better understanding of what we do with NASA iTech and how we're able to do it. But if anybody in here has a question, I wanted to give you the opportunity to ask. If not, it just means, wow, I covered everything. No? Nothing? Okay, well, great. Well, thank you for entertaining me. Oh, sure. Terry? Say that again.
Sorry. I'm from Canada, I'm from Edmonton, and it occurs to me that North America is one big landmass. Is there anything that's going on with NASA in Canada?
Well, I mean, we do work with Canada pretty closely on station. I mean, and they market that pretty well. But in terms of specific work that we're doing with Canada currently, I'm not really sure, but I know we do work with them as an agency. Oh, yeah. Yes, absolutely. It's something we would definitely, look into doing and fitting it into whatever that schedule would be. We'd love to find those Canadian, companies developing amazing technologies. Anything else? Okay, well, thank you, everyone, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. Those of you who don't miss the impact tables, that is going to be the most valuable time for both the entrepreneurs and those of you that are here to actually engage with them on the technologies. I appreciate your time, and I'll see you later after the impact tables. Thank you.